Bigger is better, usually. But something most people forget is you can't just start big, you need to start small and build your way up to it, lest you be overwhelmed by its size and unprepared to handle it. Railways are no different, and while bigger, more powerful locomotives were always desirable, one railroad learned the hard way that there was such a thing as going too big too soon. In 1911, the Atchison, Topeka and Santa Fe Railway wanted more powerful locomotives to work on many of the steep, mountainous routes the railway followed. Heavy trains needed to be double-headed in order to tackle the tough grades, and so one locomotive with the power of two was greatly desired. This led the company to experiment with Mallet designs, producing a successful 2662 by 1910, and while this engine was powerful, flexible and relatively straightforward to maintain, the ATSF felt they could go bigger. Their 2662 Mallets were created by taking a 262 locomotive, extending the boiler and frames, and doubling the number of driving wheels. And since this worked, they decided to repeat the process with their already large 210-2 engines. The Class 900s and 1600s were the ones already hauling trains through the mountains, so it made sense to try and double them up into Mallets. 10 were sent to the Baldwin Locomotive Works, where work began transforming them. They kept their original 28 by 32 inch high-pressure cylinders, these being used to power the rear set of driving wheels, while another set of 38 by 32 inch low-pressure cylinders were mounted on the forward bogie, these powering the front set of driving wheels. A feed water heater and superheater were fitted, and in order to provide steam to the low-pressure cylinders, exhaust steam from the high-pressure cylinders would pass through a reheater and be used again. Despite looking bigger, the boiler remained the same size, with the heaters making up the extra length. They were fitted with Jacobs Schubert fireboxes, oil-fired and given new turtleback tenders, these being slightly longer than their original tenders but with an overall lower height, giving drivers a better view when travelling in reverse. Completed in 1911, these massive 210-10-2s were 122 feet long, weighed 279 tons, had 20 57-inch driving wheels, and were officially the largest locomotives in the world at the time. Dubbed the 3000 class, they were put to work on heavy freight trains around Cajon Pass and the Tehachapi Loop, where it was found they had a phenomenal tractive effort, able to haul any load along the grades of the railway with ease. This, however, is about all the praise they ever got, as their great big size came with a few great big drawbacks, mostly their boilers. You see, even though the engines had twice as many cylinders as they did before, the boiler size wasn't increased to keep up with demand. As such, despite having an incredible amount of pulling power, the 3000s couldn't sustain it at high speeds. It was found that engine crews could maintain a substantial boiler pressure when travelling at around 10 to 15 miles an hour, but this meant already slow-moving freight trains would practically be moving at a snail's pace. Drivers remarked how much effort it took to get the engines to move faster than 7 miles an hour, and running speeds were so slow that, supposedly, while pulling a train down a grade in Cajon Pass infamous for causing derailments, the air brakes on an engine failed, but it managed to avoid derailing simply because it was already going so slow. Quickly proving to be too sluggish to do the goods work they were intended to do, the Class 3000s were instead used as banking engines. It seems they were much better suited for pushing other trains up the hills, but at the end of the day, the Atchison, Topeka and Santa Fe wanted engines that could pull the trains through the mountains, not bankers. As such, by 1915, the first of the 3000s was withdrawn and sent back to Baldwin so it could be reverted back to a 210-2. By 1918, all 10 had been converted, and no more Class 3000 engines were built. Ironically, that same year, Virginian Railways produced their Class AEs, also a 210-10-2 Mallet design. These were not only a success, but continued to work well into the 1950s, a massive improvement compared to the 3000s. Even though the AEs were a success, no more 210-10-2s were ever built. Given that the most common Malays to come afterwards had 6 or 8 driving wheels per bogie, 10 was likely just too excessive. At the time the Class 3000s were built, Malays were a fairly new concept in the US. Many railroads were still trying to get to grips with the design and how best to utilize them, so it's fair to say that jumping from an already complex 2662 to a mega 210-10-2 was very much a case of going too big too soon. Like I said, as much as going bigger is usually better, you have to take your time and build up to big things, as it can be very easy to get overwhelmed. It's possible that if the Atchison, Topeka and Santa Fe Railway took their time developing the 3000s, they could have been some of the biggest and best freight engines in the US. But as it stands, let them be a lesson that you need to be ready to go big, or else it's going to be a very slow ride home. Subscribe for more.